Okay.
Take two?
Take two.
All right, so
This is it started over again. So. Okay, all right. This is episode 4 of the Music Cafe. Scott and Joe here. Last week we had our really good friend Kuda on the show. If you took a listen, and we talked a lot about getting started as a beginning songwriter, how to write your songs, or some tips, record, playing shows, getting out, marketing your stuff so that you get your material heard. So this week,
general outline of how you should be getting the start to the finish of a song or whatever kind of project. But
right,
yeah, last week was mostly about recording and kind of a little brush up on each step along the way.
Right.
Did you go through that whole thing there before I interrupted?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
A little bit. That's okay. But this week we thought maybe we would touch more on the production side, either as, from the side of the songwriter trying to get their stuff down, or on the side of a beginning studio engineer or producer. Some tips and tricks, and we can talk a little bit about mics and software and some recording equipment, how to get started in your bedroom or your basement or wherever it works for you. So, yeah. Anyway, so Joe, actually, you probably started on stuff before I did.
Yeah, I've been
messing around with some recording stuff for a while.
For a long time. The first time I ever did anything music-wise, like as far as like putting it into like software and everything, and like actually getting a recorded project, was for my friends, I chopped up a bunch of Samuel L. Jackson lines and quotes from movies, and then I just like put some stupid beats behind it, and I was like going back to it. It's trash. It's garbage. Yeah, it's the production's terrible and all that. That's actually how I got started going. That was the first thing I ever tried.
What software did you use?
GarageBand. Yeah, because I had a little MacBook at the time. It's just standard on there, so I tried figuring out how to use that, and then I got pretty decent with GarageBand, and then I was like, okay, there's way too many limitations with it. Right. Not anymore these days. GarageBand's actually pretty legit, but I moved on to Logic, which is like the equivalent of Pro Tools for Apple.
Right.
But and then I got really good with Logic, and that was Logic 9. But then I moved on to Logic Pro X is what I have now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's crazy.
Right.
I love it.
So, yeah, I didn't really start doing stuff until my senior year of high school.
Yeah, you were recording in your basement?
I was recording in my basement with this band.
With a rig and everything, right?
Almost Perfect. Well, kinda. It was my laptop and a little USB interface, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But, and everything was running. We record everything separately. Or we tried to.
2 channels at a time.
2 channels at a time, yeah. And then, I really did start in live sound in high school and doing.
See, I was the opposite. I started all like MIDI files and all that, and like doing the whole arranging and like sound design. And all that.
Yeah. And then I came to college and did a lot of stuff with the Bradley Tech crew. And then when I switched from engineering to music business, I had the idea about starting a recording studio at Bradley, and then I really got into it and started doing some research on different mics, different gear that would work. Took Gary's recording classes, mostly all self-taught, but a couple of recording classes, and now I've got some nicer stuff, and I work on Pro Tools, which, I mean, honestly, it's about 50-50, I would say, between like regular like studios now. Most bigger studios you use Pro Tools, but you talk to any like beat maker or producer or anything like that.
Yeah,
You're all familiar with Logic as well, so doesn't really
Logic,
matter.
Fruity Loops.
Yep. FL Studio.
Yeah, that's what that is.
Oh, Fruity Loops.
Fruity
yeah.
Loops is
I guess,
FL Studio. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. What's that that YouTube series that I showed you? It's the it's where the producers do the 10-minute challenge or whatever to make a beat.
Yeah, you were showing me
You
that.
watch it shows the software that they're using. They all use something different.
Right.
So, I mean, we should get into that first.
Different softwares?
Sure. Like just the basic, what you need for home recording.
Recording, yeah. Okay, so if either, and this applies to both songwriters, starting musicians, but also starting producers or recording engineers. If you don't have the ability to get into a professional studio, starting yourself, you basically need a couple of things. You need obviously your
computer.
Well, I was going to start the most basic level, your instrument.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, obviously
you need an
prepped
instrument
with that.
Yeah.
You need some way to record the instrument. So a microphone, or if it's a guitar, what's called a direct input box. You can plug the guitar into it. And then you need some sort of way to translate that signal to plug into your computer. So some sort of recording interface. Most of the cheaper ones come in the form of USB. Makes it really easy to plug it into your computer. You can go to Guitar Center and buy them for $200. Right. 2-channel.
So you're talking of the audio interface.
Yep. Yeah. The audio interface there.
Yeah.
So and then that plugs into your computer.
Right.
And then you need some sort of software. If you want to do it for free, Audacity's decent. That's how I started. Or GarageBand if you're a Mac user.
GarageBand.
Right. And then you can also pay for, or rip it off. We didn't say that. Pay for Logic or Pro Tools, some sort of premium software. You need a decently powerful computer for that kind of stuff.
Right.
But the free stuff have some limitations in terms of operating them and the different effects you can put on and the way you can edit your stuff. But Pro Tools and Logic really have no sort of limitations on it.
Right.
So whatever you're used to, whatever you're familiar with. And that's really about all you need to get started.
Right.
It's very simple.
In review.
Yeah.
You will need your source material, whether it be your, DJ setup or whatever, or your guitar or your piano or your voice.
Right.
And then you need a way to record that.
Or your band.
Yeah. And then you'll need a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're doing this absolutely basic. You're doing one instrument at a time. So you got your microphone. You need an audio cable, like an XLR cable, or a 1/4-inch jack, like if you're doing like an electric guitar or something like that. Yeah. But you need something to connect the audio to the computer. So that line needs to connect to your audio interface.
Right.
So some popular ones would be like, what's the M Audio one?
M Audio, they're made by Avid or Focusrite.
Yeah, that has the Scarlett series, which is great. That's
really,
what I use.
Really nice. And then those are really the two I would recommend to begin with. Something
recommended just for future use, so you don't have to buy another audio interface. Find something with it's 48 volt phantom power.
Yep.
If you move on to a condenser mic, which is like this or the one that Scott's got there, if anyone's watching the video, if we post the video.
Yeah.
But it's a large diaphragm condenser mic. It uses phantom power is what it's called.
Right.
You will see a little button on the audio interface that says 48V, which is 48 volts, which is otherwise known as phantom power.
Yes.
That'll power the microphone for you, and it's a better microphone.
Right.
But you'll want to look for something with that. And then however many channels you want, that's up to you. But then also look into the connectivity type of that audio interface, whether it be USB, which when you're starting out, that's probably what you're going to want to go for. Otherwise, you're going to have to go to like Lightning port or Firewire or something along those lines.
A couple other formats which
and those
we
are
can get into.
Super expensive, and you'll need more connection options. And I assume if you're starting out, you're using your laptop, so
Right.
just
Right.
yeah.
Just stick with that.
So now we're at
and then the software, right? So Pro Tools, Logic, GarageBand, and then that to record it. That's about it. And then obviously you can bounce it out of that software and put it anywhere you want. But let's dive in a little bit into the different types of mics so that people know what they can use them for and what not. Or like as a studio guy or someone who's interested in production, it's good to know the difference.
Let's say you're a starting musician and you have enough money for one microphone.
Mm-hmm.
What is the type of microphone, or specifically what example? Is it a sure?
No. Oh yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Touche.
Heyo. No, but what would you say is the best microphone to go out and buy for yourself? For the let's say, I guess there's a few different scenarios, but dive into it.
Okay. If you only can buy one microphone, and let's say you have a couple $100 that you've saved up that you want to spend, I would look to buy some sort of what's called a condenser microphone, which is the ones that Joe and I use for this, but they have many different applications. You can use them for vocals, spoken word, as well as singing. You can put them on virtually any instrument. Some are better than others, but to get started, you can pretty much put them on anything.
Right.
And you can get them for $150. You know.
This one was $150.
Yeah, I believe the one I'm using was $200 or $250. But
the blues are nice.
Yeah. So you can look at some of the more cost-effective brands are Audio-Technica, Blue.
Blue is always
MXL,
just a solid choice. MXL too.
Sterling Audio is another one, and they will all get you started. So some sort of electronic condenser, because they pick up more. They have more applications. They sound a lot better than any sort of just handheld vocal mic.
It's way more natural.
Way more natural, sure. Or Shure is another one, but they're going to be a little bit more expensive.
Right. Now,
so look at that.
Would you say that would be something more for like acoustic instruments and like
for sure, vocals for
mostly.
Sure. Yeah, I would not. So if you're a drummer.
Like if you're someone that's trying to pick up percussive samples, you would probably want a 57, right?
Yeah. So the electron condenser is got a lot of applications, and you can put them over top of like overheads on drums. Would not recommend putting them directly on like a snare drum or a kick drum or anything like that, because they're not going to do well. They're going to get overloaded. You're not going to get any good sound out of it. So if you're a drummer, don't listen to anything I just said, but like just a singer-songwriter with a guitar or anything else, like that's the way to go for vocals.
The bedroom recordings.
Yep, bedroom recordings
minus
for sure.
Drums.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other type of mic that you could also do is a dynamic mic, and Shure SM57s or 58s are the most commonly known sort of dynamic mic.
It's like the standard. That's the staple.
They're the standard, sure.
Yeah.
They're much more durable. They can take a physical beating, but also can pick up much louder types of instruments. So like a drum set, or if you like, if you're like a death metal singer, like a lot of, or even Red Hot Chili Peppers used dynamic mics for their vocal recordings.
For at least Ketis.
Right. It just depends on what you want it to sound like. Those range $100, $150 usually. So this would be good to have to put on like on a guitar amp would be good on with a 57, or drum, like I said, drum set, something like that. So that's, I think, to get started, those would be the two types of mics you'd want to pick up, and then of course you need to have a stand for each one. Yeah. And a cable for each one, and they run off of what's called XLR cable, which has got 3 pins on it or in it. Standard,
easy to find.
Yeah, and just go to Guitar Center or any music shop; they've got them.
A lot of times when you buy a stand, they might even have the cable come with it.
Yeah.
If you get like a little package.
So
that's how I got my first one.
Yeah, Guitar Center, you can get a bundle pack of a basic dynamic mic, a cable, and a stand for like $100.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or even actually shout out to Flory's Music is
Yeah.
where I got my first mic stand, like cable package, actually.
Yep. When I got started, cool story, I built a couple of short mic stands.
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't want to buy them, but I had materials to build one.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's
But
like
they're not adjustable. So you want one that's adjustable.
in high school and you're just making your
stuff.
don't have any money to spend on any of this stuff. So
right.
what I did, so with one great investment to make is it's a pop filter. If you're doing vocal recordings, get a pop filter. What that is, if you don't know at all what I'm talking about, it's that circle little mesh thing that is always in front of the microphone that you see all the time. And if you're watching the video at all, it's this.
Right.
What I did, and you've seen it, right? The thing that I made.
Yeah, this works really well if you have to make one.
Right. So honestly, this thing I picked up for, I think with tax and everything, it was about $27 to pick this thing up. The real one.
Oh, the real one that you're using now.
Right. Yes. Now, I did make one for around $5 to $8 using those crochet like plastic rings that you like clip together, and you're supposed like it stretches the fabric between them. And then I got 2 layers of pantyhose. That like the stockings, whatever.
Works really well.
Stretched it out, pushed it through the rings, and then just clamped it together. Now,
did you just hold it in front of the mic?
Yeah, I just held it. I just held it in front of the mic when I did vocal recordings.
Yeah.
And it worked great, actually, but you got to hold it. It's totally, it's a rig.
But what a pop filter does is it eliminates the hard, like, P or S sounds when you're recording.
When you pronounce a P, a T, or an S, there's a lot of airflow out of those consonants. So you don't want all of that air or even moisture getting into your microphone. So like,
but also makes it sound more even if you're singing.
Right, because when you're like listening all of a sudden and then, you hear something like this or like a pop, you're going to hear that in the recording. So with the pop filter, it's going to block that out. Hopefully that example actually worked out well. So this is pop without the filter and pop with it. So I hope that helped out a lot. So that's all it took was just having the filter in the way. Great investment.
You don't really need them
recording
for instruments too much.
No, like it's specifically for
vocals.
For vocals, yeah.
Okay. So then once you get a mic and a stand and a cable, you plug it into your interface. And the interface, what that does is it there's a difference between analog signal. So anything that comes out of a microphone or basically any microphone at all.
Anymore, if someone's recording in their bedroom, they're not recording analog. They're going to convert that to digital.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. It's like you're coming out of the microphone, which is an analog signal, and then you go into the interface that converts that to a digital signal to record it into your computer, right?
Right.
And they have what's called a preamp. And in the preamp, it basically amplifies the signal a little bit from the mic so that it can be a good recording level in your software. And it's this little knob on the front of it that you turn up. And there should be some sort of meter on the front that can tell you basically anything. You want it definitely not as low as possible, but you don't want it to be in the red. It's called clipping. So you turn it up in the middle there, and it should give you some good recording volume.
Right.
And then that goes from the interface to your computer via USB or whatever it is.
So again, this was just a little step up that I had when I first started recording was that whole clipping thing and making sure what is a healthy volume to record at. So basically what happens is when you plug in your microphone into the audio interface, I feel like I'm going to sneeze from like a mile away. So you can control how much space, I guess.
Well,
that
the way
you
I
want
put it,
that microphone to record.
sure.
But essentially, if you don't know anything, it's like how much volume are you recording
input
at,
the amount of volume you are letting into
the microphone.
yes.
Yeah, or that you are letting, how much of that signal are you letting through? But technically, I mean, basically, when you're reading a meter, and this goes into mixing too.
Yep.
So you can watch it on the computer. You'll see the green bar bouncing up and down with all the audio signals. And sometimes you'll see that it might be really low, or it might be going into either a yellow or like an orange, however your audio workstation has that interpreted.
Right.
And then there's a red. That's a standard across the board.
Yep.
So what that means is that your signal is getting clipped, and that means that when you look at a waveform and it's got the spikes going up and down, that means that top of the spike, your computer cannot process that much signal, so it's just literally cutting that top off the end there, and it sounds terrible.
Sounds distorted.
Right. It sounds distorted because it's not processing the entire sound there anymore.
Right.
It's just cutting out some sound. So that's what's happening with that. So what you want to do, and this is just kind of how I do it, is I will first figure out how loud you are going to be performing at.
Right.
Either vocally, instrumentally, figure out exactly how you are going to perform it when you record it. Then with that, figure out how much input on your audio interface, like how much signal or how loud do you want the microphone to process the audio signal into the computer. So kind of adjust that until you kind of see your like the bar in
your
the
meter,
in the meter, or on the actual interface on the Scarlett. They actually have like a green ring around the gain there.
Yep.
Now, I will keep adjusting that up until my performing volume is bringing that green bar all the way up to where it's like just about to turn to like yellow there.
Right.
I feel like that's the healthiest signal. Now that should be like about the loudest that you're going to.
Yeah, definitely when you before you start recording, when you're checking your volume, be performing at the level that you will actually perform.
Right.
Right? Because a lot of people, like, kind of jumping ahead when you're in the studio.
Test.
Yeah, right. If the
that,
guy's like
doesn't mean anything.
playing the guitar,
like,
the drums, or like check 1 2, it's not nearly
all
the
that means
levels.
is that the mic is on.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything about how you should be recording.
And then when the moment that you say, okay, here we go, and you push record, it's 3 times as loud. Then
or way quieter than you imagine.
Right.
You know.
And
then it is just as bad to take a clip that is too strong, so one that is something that's distorted and clipping at the top, and try to bring that down and try to hide that.
Right.
And I think it's just as bad to try to take something that's too quiet and try to bring it up.
Right. Although it is a little bit easier to do
it is easier to do the quieter up
because it's not distorted.
It doesn't fit as well into your other, like if you record other things at better, healthier volumes and inputs, it's just not going to sound as well. So you just want to make sure that when you are reading the meters on your computer, basically try to figure that the volume that you're recording at and the loudest volume that you're recording at should be generally right where your green meter is switching over to the yellow there. You still want to try to be more in the green side, but that is the healthy volume that should be recorded at, and then should be good from there.
And then so if you're doing it one at a time on your software, you'll see that you can have multiple tracks. You call it tracks, and each track is a certain recording. You can do it all together, like you can do your vocals
separate
and guitar
vocals on top of each other.
Right. Yeah. You can do them all together in one track, or you can do them separate. And then each track, you can record each one. So, if you're a guitar player, if you're a guitar and singer. So you record your guitar parts on one track, and then you'll go back, and as you listen to the guitar part, you'll sing to it, and you'll do what's called an overdub on a separate track. And then if you want to add like keys or whatever else, those are going to be on separate tracks, so that then you can go back and mix them, arrange them however you want in the mix.
Okay.
Right. Now the recording interface. So the recording interface probably will either only have one or two, maybe four. Some of the cheaper ones you can get 4 tracks on, but you really don't need it. The more inputs you have on your recording interface, the more tracks you can record at the same time.
Right. And I guess my tip would be, if you are just a bedroom songwriter, you're just doing this by yourself, the best way to go would be the 1 or 2 track, or the 1 or 2 channel interface. So my suggestion would be the Scarlett. It's the one, I think, I forget how
the one or the solo,
the one channel, and then it's
solo
like the 2
or the duo
is what it is.
Right.
But I mean, otherwise, if you have a bunch of instruments and you don't want to mess with like switching cables around all the time,
right,
go ahead and get like the 18 track or the 18 channel interface. They still have a USB one for that, but like it's way more money. So I'd say the 2 channel is probably the best investment.
I think they make a 4 channel.
They do make a 4 channel.
Yeah.
I think it's technically 18 because they got MIDI on the back too.
Oh.
And then they got something else that you can connect
with,
but it's 4 channels there, and then they got other connections on the back too. And then they've got like audio jacks on the back. It's like it's a whole thing.
Right.
But so where are we from there? Then we
go into mixing for sure. So once you start recording, do all the takes that you want, tracks into your software,
whether it be Logic or
Pro Tools, or
GarageBand, FL Studio.
There's
the works,
whatever.
All of those.
Yep. So there's a difference between the recording, the tracking process, and the mixing process. So usually what you want to do is you want to record all of your tracks first. You don't want to. You can do a little bit of mixing, but it's not you're not in the same headspace mentally between your recording and so recording is like the artistic. You're playing, you're pushing record, and then once you get all your tracks done, your guitar tracks, your keys, your vocals, whatever you want, then you can then
get into more of a creative side,
right? And mix them the way you want or the way you think it should sound, for your particular song. And in that space, you then can adjust each volume. You can balance the tracks together. You can add effects. You can EQ certain things. And that's if you're doing it the way we're talking about, it's called in the box. You're doing everything in the box, which is all in your software. You don't have any additional
translating to computer.
Your computer, right? Yeah. You don't have any additional mixing hardware, soundboards, or anything like that. So Joe, in your experience, you've done a lot of in the box stuff.
Yes.
What are some tips and tricks after you get everything recorded?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I've definitely, so when I started out, I was like all MIDI files because I was just messing around with like songwriting and just having fun, honestly, which I will say is the most successful way to do any sort of songwriting, is just have fun with it and just kind of let loose. So when I am working in the box or on the computer, I mean, do you want to go with like just strictly MIDI files or just how I've been doing it recently?
I mean, how like what's your mentality behind it once you get everything recorded and you're going to do a mix?
Well, personally, I'm terrible at mixing, in my personal opinion. But
as a songwriter, how do you approach it?
As a songwriter, yes. I first, record everything, listen through, make sure that you recorded everything on time.
Yeah. We talked about click track last week.
Record it to a click track and make sure everything is on time.
Right.
Because without that, it's terribly painful to go back and try to clip all these things and line everything up.
Right.
And then even when you do line everything up, chances are the points in between
Aren't
those downbeats or upbeats, whatever you need syncopated,
right.
it doesn't sound
not in
natural
time.
anymore. Yeah,
Right.
it just sounds like you sped things up and down, and it doesn't sound
And
right.
as a side note, almost every software has the ability to create a click track in the software.
Right.
So you don't have to have, I mean, you can do it on your phone, just like putting your earbuds in and doing it that way.
Right.
But it's way easier to do it through your software.
Right. And with Logic, you can adjust how the click track sounds. So it's actually, so like if I'm recording to, the last thing that I did was very percussive.
Sure.
So the click track was a little bit hard to hear.
Right.
You can go into your metronome settings and change how that metronome click is tuned and how it sounds. And if you want it to have an upbeat, so you know where the first beat of the count is.
Right.
So things of that. So definitely make sure things are on time. Then, listen through, make sure there's no little hiccups here and there. And then most importantly, give yourself some time. Give it like
between the recording and the mixing process?
And the mixing process.
Yeah.
Definitely just sit away from it and then go back to it maybe like a week later. Just kind of free your headspace so you're not totally obsessed with it.
Right.
Because when you get so neck deep in it, you lose perspective on exactly what this was supposed to be anymore. So definitely give yourself some time away from your recording. Go back, and then what I would do is start on the drums. And
start with the rhythm instruments.
Exactly.
Make sure you get those sounding the way you want.
I mean, that's definitely I think it is the most important part of any recording is if you have percussion
some
at
sort
all.
of rhythm. Yeah.
Right. That is the basis of any style of music, is that when you define a style of music, it's the rhythm pattern that defines it basically.
Yep.
So definitely start on drums, move on to bass, keys, instruments, and then you want to do your vocals on top of that. But I guess the rule of thumb that I do is just kind of know your frequencies, so that and even at the very basics of it, like where I'm at with frequencies,
so know what you want each thing to sound like.
Right. So if you got real high note piano keys that are real twinkly kind of sound, that'd be a good way to put it, I guess.
Yep.
Those are higher notes. You want higher frequencies. So when you go into your mix, there's usually like a little like icon on each channel that you can click into, and then that will go into your equalizer. So that's your EQ. So what that is like it's the whole like little. First, it starts out as just like a straight bar, but then you can adjust that and make the little. I don't know how the basic
EQ curves.
Right. You make the little curves of how and you can hear it when you're listening to it. You can hear it change the sound. So on the right side, that's your higher frequencies. On the left, that's your lower. What you want to do is eliminate all of the frequencies that you do not want in there. You do not want to boost any frequencies. Is at the start.
At the start.
You do not want to boost any frequencies, because then that can just ruin your mix later on. And then you have to start all over. So what I start with is like kick drum, and that I usually want to be more punchy, but with low end on it. So I will take out all of the mids. So anything middle frequency, I will bring that down. Because anything percussive will have a little bit more of a like a higher end frequency to have that snap to it. But then you want that, like, you want some meat to it. So you put a little bit more low end on it. But you're not boosting any of those frequencies. You're just taking out the frequencies that you do not want. So I guess the best way to explain this is that kind of a rule of thumb. All sounds that are created basically have some sort of input of all frequencies across the board. So even this right here, we're not going to EQ this or anything, but when you're mixing things, kind of understand that every single sound that you're putting in there
Mm-hmm.
has all sorts of frequencies. Now, they might be dominant in some other ends of the frequency spectrum, and what you want to do is make sure that that is the only thing that's focused on. So
Sure.
when there are other things with other frequencies that are dominant,
Yeah.
there are other instruments that might have a little bit of that frequency that might cancel it out later. This is so hard to
I'm
explain.
sorry. I'm actually kind of chuckling to myself.
About me?
Yeah.
Because I have no idea what I'm
Well,
talking
you
about.
know what you're talking about.
But I'm trying to make it
Explain
so
it.
understandable to people who also don't know how to
Do this.
Yeah, go for it.
So, what you're talking about is basically what we call it's muddy. A mix is muddy. There are things in it that you don't want to hear, right? That makes it sound not as clear, I guess is the other way to put it.
Yeah, so it's
Right.
essentially like that. What I was saying, like when you have two separate sounds that you've recorded,
Yep.
and they are both playing a similar frequency,
Yep.
they will cancel each other out.
Right. They'll
More
get
or
in the way
less,
of each
they
other.
will get in the way of each other for sure. So if you had one sound that is playing at a frequency that and that's
really
like
wanna
the
hear.
natural frequency of
Yep.
that sound.
Yep.
But there is something else that is also playing that frequency in the same exact space as that.
Yep.
That will cancel that out.
Yeah, you wanna make the adjustments so that you can hear
So I guess I'm getting ahead of myself
a little bit. That's okay.
with as far as EQing.
Yeah.
So I guess what I really start out, it has been a while since I've done this, so
It's okay.
I will record and then I will figure out exactly in the panning, like where in the space you want that placed.
Okay.
That's what I do first.
Okay. So,
How would you do it?
well, and oftentimes, so like I said last week, I'm not like a songwriter. I'm a musician. I play it in bands, but I don't usually record any of my own stuff. So most people come to me to record and mix something. And
Which is
side
always a
note,
good idea.
if you're jumping ahead, yeah, it's a really good idea. So as a musician, you record your stuff, and then you may want to have someone else listen and mix it, because it does separate you from the mix a little bit. Helps you get a better idea of what it really could sound like. But anyway, so they bring me a song, and I'm gonna mix it. I usually do a couple listens through, make sure everything's good. And then I help establish what they want it to sound like. What are they going for, right? What type of style is it? What
inspired the song?
What inspired the song? And that helps me make creative choices as I'm going through and mixing the song. Okay.
Right.
So, if an artist says, my inspiration is Led Zeppelin, or whatever, right? It makes me make different choices than if they said my inspiration is Daft Punk.
Right.
Different style, different type of instrumentation. So once I get an idea of that, I will go through each track, each instrument, like you were saying, starting with the rhythm instruments. So the drums, and then bass, and then any rhythm, keys, or guitar parts, because that
like rhythm guitar. Yeah.
Right, rhythm guitar. Because if you think about it, when you build a song, when you're writing a song, from the basic level, from ground up, you always you start with the rhythm stuff that builds the foundation for the song.
Right. And usually the rhythm section is playing the basic structure of the song, and then anything else is melody,
on top of
basically.
that. Right. So, and then you add on your solos, and then your vocals, and then any other background horn parts or whatever it is.
Right.
So I work the same way that you build the song. That's kind of the basic way. Of course, you can. Every rule of thumb is meant to be broken. So once you learn the rules, you can then expand and break them.
Right.
But starting off, focus on the rhythm stuff. Go through each one, make sure they recorded well, they sound good, and then kind of mess with your EQ. And your panning, which allows you to move the sound. If you're listening to headphones or on a set of speakers that is
Two
in
sets
stereo,
two speakers.
Two speakers, right?
You
can then move that sound from the left side to the right side, or somewhere in the middle.
Also known as stereo.
Stereo, correct. Yeah. Yes. So what I do is I kind of get a basic idea of where I want those, like you were saying, in the mix. You know?
Right. So I guess there should be two things that are understood when you're doing a mix. It's almost like you kind of have to. It's a new kind of universe or a new dimension that you need to understand. There is the actual physical placement of your sound in the mix. So that means, like, if you are actually envisioning, like if you're listening to something on headphones, there is something like directly in front of you, so that is the center of the mix, and then physically you can move those instruments out to the side, let's say, or to one headphone or the other.
Right.
And there's a spectrum. It's not just like middle, left, right.
Right.
There's a whole spectrum that you can move it to the left, and a whole gradual spectrum to the right as well.
I like to think of them as planes. So you know, you have a vertical plane,
right,
up or down. So volume, higher or lower.
Oh, so you're doing all three.
Think about this, yeah. So, and then you have the horizontal plane, which is what we're talking about, left or right.
Right.
Okay, and you have all of that space to play with. And then there's actually a third one. It's distance, front or back. Right. And then we can get into this, but that's like how when you add effects, it make it sound more distant or closer to you.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
so,
and that can kind of play into the volume.
You can. Absolutely
too.
Can. Right. So, but those are the three, what I think of as planes when you're doing a mix that you can put your sound in.
What I was going to, the thing I was going on is a little bit different.
Okay.
Was one, that is definitely like, Scott as a, audio
as a mixing
producer,
engineer,
so he knows what he's talking about. But if you're coming up with the basic placement of your panning and your EQ just to make things stand out from each other, basically when you have, the left and the right, you can pan things that way. And then you need to make sure that anything that is similar frequency, what I was talking about. So if you placed hi-hat cymbals on the right and it's playing at a certain frequency, like 1500 hertz or something like that
on cymbals.
Yeah,
they range anywhere between like 500 and all the way up to 5k.
Yeah, so let's say 5k,
somewhere in there.
Let's say 5k. And then you got something else like a shaker or something that's also playing at 5k. You essentially do not want the shaker playing the same frequency in the same panning placement. So you don't want to put those two instruments that are playing the same frequency in the same physical spot, so over on the right, and playing the same frequency. If they're going to be in the same position, you want them playing different frequencies, because then they're going to cancel each other out, basically. Or one is going to hide under the other. So that's the way that I look at it, is that there's two ways of placing things. One in the frequency range, and two in the actual physical placement of the. And now I could be totally wrong, but that gets me.
That's
a little
right.
bit started.
That I'm very interested to hear your perspective as a songwriter, like how you, not necessarily a guy that only does mixing.
And this is why it's always good to actually take it
to
a studio engineer.
Or some audio guy that can. And then part of my job,
the actual science behind
is then to interpret what the artist or songwriter wants. Right. So Joe comes in. He said, "I've got these recordings, and this is kind of what it sound like." And then he can just tell me, and I can make the adjustments without even. He doesn't really need to know some of the technical stuff. He just knows what he wants it to sound like, and then I make the adjustments to interpret that.
And it is good to get that separation, because it isn't so much of an artistic format anymore. It's a very technical format.
At the beginning of the mixing process.
At the beginning of the mixing process, it's very technical, and it's still technical, but you know how to interpret these artistic, the vision of the artist, and make the technical adjustments to make that happen. You know how to interpret what they're trying to emote, I guess.
Right. Okay. That got a little bit deeper than I think we wanted to, but we could actually do a whole several hours on just mixing, which we can do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to explain just through spoken word. It's definitely easier if you have some sort of visual. Some way that
we should get like an actual track, like one of those like basic ones.
We can make adjustments and stuff.
And we could like upload like a video of the actual screen, like of the audio workstation, and that would be great. And then we can just have like a little thumbnail.
Right. But as starting off, do your research, right? We're talking about some of the basic stuff, but the way I learned, and honestly, I just learned by just messing around with it a lot, but also
which is totally necessary.
You have to. But I read a lot of material on it. So I got a couple of
you bought like
handbooks.
3 books, yeah.
Yeah, I bought a bunch of handbooks and I read through. Just if you go online and you search basic audio or production techniques, they will say, okay, well, this is a microphone, this is an interface, this is how you plug it in, this is the basic signal flow between everything. Go to YouTube, right? Not everyone on YouTube knows what they're doing, but a lot of them have a basic understanding of how to do this. So, you can just type in like home recording tips, and there's going to be a million people on there that are like, this is how I do it. So find people that you like, and that, seem to know what they're doing.
Right. The problem with YouTube though, and I hope that we could actually help out with this if people find this on YouTube or whatever, if we decide to post it there. Is that there are a lot of popular people in the music mixing, like Logic people on YouTube that are doing like instructional videos, do not actually know how to mix and record, and they do not know how to do it the right way. So you get a lot of wrong information that conflicts with each other. So that's my issue, is that I tried strictly learning through YouTube how to mix and how to process certain things, and it gets by, but it's not the right way. Right. It won't compete.
Because then you show it to an actual studio and they're like, this is garbage.
Or you even try to push it to radio, and
like, this isn't right.
Your bounced signal from what you think is the finished product isn't anywhere close to compete with just even the volume level of what is produced from any song that you hear on the radio. Right.
But
and it's very achievable.
Yeah.
You just have to have the right mix. And I think that we should get into that with like a mixing episode.
Sure. We can do that.
So should we move on?
We can move on, yeah.
Yeah.
Once you understand, and then get balance your stuff in your software, kind of get an idea, mess around, just play around, get an idea of what each function of it does. I like to think of them as tools. So each volume adjustment or EQ or sort of effects or anything like that, it's just a tool that I can grab and use to achieve the sound that I want. So do a lot of listening, learn the basic function of each tool so that you know how you can use it. And then once you get a master at it, then you can then break the rules of what we're talking about. But yeah, get an idea. And then you can get a basic mix, what you want it to sound like. And then you can either, most softwares have the ability to what's called bounce to disk, which means it just copies all the different tracks that you recorded and mixed down to 2 tracks, a left and a right.
Stereo
track, that you can, and it saves it on your hard drive or your computer, and then you can post it wherever you want. It's usually in the format of MP3. If you can, do it in a WAV file, because MP3s are compressed, and you lose a lot of sound quality by doing MP3. So bounce it as a wave if you can, because then it's sounds better and more universal. You can take it almost anywhere.
I mean, just bounce it in as many ways as possible, because sometimes some outlets only allow certain file types. Right. Like I think for some reason iTunes only does MP3, or maybe I forget what it.
I think Bandcamp
only does MP3.
MP3s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think iTunes, like if you are putting your songs on iTunes, like just your library, and then you're sharing it to people through that.
Yep.
Like, because that's what I used to do before, only Facebook was around, and I think we had Skype back then in high school, so we would send songs to each other via Skype. So you would just click and drag your iTunes files over to that, and it would just send off.
And just as a tip, once you bounce your files, you get it done, and you think it sounds great, there's going to be, especially if you're starting off, everything that you do in the beginning is not going to be great.
No.
You're going to be like, wow, this sounds amazing. And then you either compare it to what you hear on the radio, or you show someone, they're like, yeah, it sounds okay. Or this sucks. Or if, and
that's fine.
That's great. Have people be honest with you about it. And so that way you can make adjustments and learn from it. But
or even, you might have, you wrote a great song.
Mm-hmm.
It's a terrible recording, to be honest.
Right.
So you can, when you've learned and you just keep trying and doing all these songs, you just keep trying.
Right.
And you're like, okay, I am now at that, competitive range here that I can actually, compete with, that's on the radio essentially.
Yep.
Take those songs again, revisit your sound ideas, revisit the recording process, and use those ideas again. They're great songs, let's say, and you can reuse those to get a decent recording out of it again.
Yep. Yeah, and keep your material, keep your demos so that you can learn from it. And then, the more that you try out and learn about the recording process, the better it's going to get every time. I will tell you, every project that I do, I learn something different, and so that I can apply it to the next one, and then it becomes that much better.
Right.
And don't expect to be a master at it even in a year. Right. Or ever. Right. You're always learning some other technique that you never thought of, that someone else showed you.
Right.
Or something you didn't know before. People have been doing it for, 30, 40 years, are still learning. They're masters at it.
People will always be learning at it.
Right. Always be learning. So,
I will say, this is my biggest pet peeve in recording these days. And a lot of YouTube artists do this, and major pop stars. We can get into this in the mixing episode.
Yeah, we're going to have a whole episode on mixing.
Is actual dynamic mixing versus brick wall.
Oh, yeah.
So what that means is that if you look at what you've recorded, and you will see that there's actually peaks and valleys on that waveform that just recorded your audio there,
which is natural.
Yep. That's what it should look like there. What people do essentially, if you're going to visualize it, is they take all those valleys and they bump them up to meet the peaks. So it's just all one flat line, and every frequency is boosted at its full volume there. Yep. And it is a terrible way to mix. It is probably bad for your ears, honestly. Yeah. To listen to that. And it's just that there is no
dynamic range.
Right, which, means that you're
loud and soft.
Yeah, volume-wise, that there are certain there's no emotion in it, honestly. Personally, that's how I feel. And there are ways that people, even EDM artists, a lot of them, that's kind of where this brick wall mixing came about. Right. But Deadmau5, one of the most prominent EDM artists ever, he still uses dynamic mixing.
Absolutely.
And you can look at his audio files, and there's still peaks and valleys in there. He just knows how to actually mix and record well. Yep. So that it's still, powerhouse, house music. Right. But he still knows how to make these things sound right. So just, I think that's a matter. Be aware of that. And I guess that is a good point of make sure you have good source material, right? So that you don't have to boost all these frequencies and then it just sounds terrible. A good
way to avoid that is do what I like to call, or what's called subtractive mixing,
which is what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So let's say you have a guitar track and a vocal track, and that's it, right? And you're listening through it. You've done some mixing, and you say, okay, I'd like to hear more guitar. So you bring the volume of the guitar up in the mix, okay? At some point, you then think, okay, I need more vocals, right? So then you bring the vocal up. On top, you bring it above the guitar, right? So now your volume, everything moved up, right? Yeah. And as you get more and more tracks, this gets more and more complicated because you can't just keep
boosting everything,
bringing things up and up. So
and then before you think about it, you look at all of your meters and everything's clipping. Everything's in the red.
Right. So if you think about it, if you're listening through and you say, I need to hear more guitar, if you bring down the vocal track, you will then hear more guitar. Right. It's like bringing the guitar up without bringing the volume of everything else up. So be aware of where your volume level's at, and if you have to use what's called subtractive mixing to keep that volume in check.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, I guess what you're saying is like if you have a full fleet of instruments, basically start them off at the loudest point that you would want, and then bring them down from there. Mm-hmm. So whatever you want to be the main track, so it's probably vocals if you're writing
or some
pop
sort
songs.
Of melody, yeah.
Right. So you'll have that vocal track be the loudest thing and right in the center.
Yep.
So nothing on your meters should be going above that, right?
Right.
So you want to start bringing everything down
below it
and essentially creating the illusion that, you know, these instruments are playing, you know, distance-wise, either softer or farther away from the vocals there.
Yep. So yeah, keep that in mind. And then those are some good tips to get started. And you can get started in your basement or your bedroom or whatever works for you.
Right.
And as you get more experience, to get better gear, better environment to record in. We didn't even talk about that. We can talk about that some other time, the acoustics of the room and other things. But just getting started, those are some good things to think about and explore as you record. So I think next week we will kind of tie off of this and go into mixing itself, because that is a whole nother art form that you may, as a songwriter, you may or may not want to explore, but as a beginning producer or audio engineer, is definitely something you want to become a master at, because people are going to come to you and say, hey, I don't know about this, can you mix it for me? So I think we touch on that. We're right at about an hour now. Is there anything else that you want to talk about today?
No, I don't think so. I guess just in summary, basically what you want is your instrument, your microphone, your stand, your cable, your pop filter. You want your audio interface, which is that the preamp, preferably with phantom power, 48 volt, and then you want your computer.
And a set of headphones or speakers.
That's
it. That's all you need to get started. Do your research, learn about it,
read up, and practice.
That's it. So,
do we want to talk about local shows?
Yeah, we can. We didn't do that last week. Oh, and a funny little note on that. 2 weeks ago when we posted, we record these earlier and then we post them on Sundays. I got a feedback from a friend and they said, hey, just so you know, the one you recommended had already passed when we posted it.
Oh, we should have looked at that.
LOL. Whatever. So,
well, hopefully we can start doing these live pretty soon. Dude, we might just ditch this whole SoundCloud format to begin with. It's not very conducive to this.
No, I don't know.
Should we just move the whole thing to YouTube?
Yeah, I think that'd be good, especially if we start doing more videos.
Yeah.
More like insight.
Or like Facebook Live.
Facebook Live. Yeah, we're thinking about doing Facebook Live. And if anyone's listening, we'd appreciate your feedback on that if you would watch the videos when we record them.
Because I don't think SoundCloud lets non-SoundCloud users use the website or the app anymore.
Correct.
It used
but you can
to be
sign
like
in
that,
for free.
And apparently it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, you can sign in for free with Facebook or Google or whatever.
But then you have to do the whole signing in thing, and nobody wants to do that.
Right. So when do we post? We would post this on Sunday,
which is like the 10th, I think.
It is the Yes, the 10th. So on Sunday.
Anything
Ben's
good?
Bruised? Oh, it's a yoga thing.
Nah, keep
I'm
going.
looking at Kenny's West Side. Tribute to the Grateful Dead. That'd be cool. That's on December 16th.
Mm-hmm. Love.
That's another Humphreys McGee jam band, Grateful Dead type thing.
Yeah.
The next Saturday, Still Shine, who's a really good bluegrass band from the area, is playing at Kenny's. They play all over the place. It's a good place to go. And
The Jazz Train.
Jazz Train next Thursday.
December 28th, yeah.
Yep. What's going on at Limelight?
What, oh, shoot. I totally forgot what I was going to say.
It's all right.
Hey, thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Guar is this Saturday.
I saw that.
Guar is this Saturday,
Yikes.
but this will be a day late by the time this is posted.
Yep.
So anybody that went to Guar, let me know
how that was.
Yeah.
This band called Clutch playing next Friday at
Oh, yeah.
Limelight.
Clutch used to be
There's
big.
actually not much going on in Limelight right now.
Yeah.
Sunday the 31st, the Way Down Wanderers.
Always a good show.
Really a good show.
Always a good show.
Yep. Well, I have nothing up there. Check out, I mean, anything that has open mics, coffee shops or bars or anything like that, just check them out.
Kenny's
Yep.
and Limelight. Wednesday
Limelight.
nights. They're both at the same time, but check them out.
Oh, Kenny's has an open mic now?
Yeah, they've had it for a long time, I think. I don't know if they... See, that was when they were down on Farmington.
Right.
I don't know if they still do it at the new place.
I'll have to see. But yeah, okay. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode. We were kind of all over the place, but hopefully give you some idea
Of just the basic bedroom setup.
Yep.
But
and approach to it.
Next week.
Next week.
We'll go into... Mixing. All right.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Just to tie on to this episode.
Yeah.
So
Jeez.
thanks, guys. I'm Scott. This is Joe.
I'm Joe. Definitely comment. Let us know if there are certain things that you'd like to hear about, if you have any questions, and definitely if you'd like to move away from SoundCloud, because we think it totally sucks.
Yeah. It's good to get started. But we hope to move it to iTunes or some other format pretty quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully iTunes, but YouTube would be cool. I feel like YouTube's growing in that. Whatever. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Yep. We'll see you next week.